Welcome to the first HostingCon Meet A Speaker webinar. I'm Kevin Gould from HostingCon, and I'm the moderator for today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. The Meet A Speaker webinar is something new that we are trying this year. The purpose is to introduce HostingCon and have a couple of our outstanding speakers highlight some sessions in this year's conference program. But before I make introductions, I want to say a few words about HostingCon 2013. HostingCon 2013 is being held in Austin, Texas at the Austin Convention Center from Monday, June 17th to Wednesday, June 19th. So why Austin? Multiple reasons, and most importantly due to attendee demand. Let me explain. We realize that attendees not only want to network and learn, but also have a fun time doing it. As a live music capital of the world, Austin offers great entertainment within walking distance of the hotel. It's convenient with the convention center being just 7.5 miles away from the Austin Bergstrom International Airport, one of the top 3 airports worldwide, and it's technologically advanced. The convention center is a state-of-the-art facility which hosts South by Southwest each year. Location is important, but attendees come to HostingCon to network, learn, and grow. Let's talk about networking. So networking this year at HostingCon, as with all prior years, there's 3 sponsored events, including an opening reception that occurs on Monday following the keynote, a happy hour in the exhibit hall on Tuesday, and then a closing reception on Wednesday. But new for 2013 is we've extended the networking opportunities. First, what we're going to do is we're placing lunch adjacent to the exhibit hall. And this really gives you a chance to extend your conversations that occur with potential partners and move it over lunch. Second, we've enhanced HostingCon Connect. For those not familiar with this benefit, for a full conference pass, HostingCon Connect allows you to contact attendees you most desire to connect with before and during the conference. And now we've enhanced this popular benefit by providing semi-private meeting space within the networking lounge, available on a first-come, first-served basis. So now, not only can you connect, but you can also identify a place to meet. HostingCon 2013 has also been designed for learning. This year, we developed and organized 45 educational sessions. We have recruited the top subject matter experts, industry executives, and thought leaders to present across 4 tracks: sales and marketing, technology, issues and trends, and management. We have 3 power-packed panel discussions in a large hall and a keynote delivered by a leading innovation expert. And here are some of the prominent brands presenting at HostingCon 2013. So now let me introduce 2 of our outstanding presenters for the year. First, Antonio Piraino. Antonio serves as the CTO of ScienceLogic, a leading provider of smart IT operations and cloud management software, where he guides the company's IT management vision and product strategy. Antonio has more than 15 years of IT experience in sectors ranging from telecommunications to software development, and came to ScienceLogic from Tier 1 Research, a division of the 451 Group, where he was Vice President and Research Director. Welcome, Antonio.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Kevin.
Our second speaker is Phil Shih. Philbert is the founder and managing director of Structure Research, an independent research and consulting firm devoted to the hosting and cloud infrastructure services market. Mr. Shih has covered the hosting infrastructure space for over a decade. Prior to founding Structure Research, Phil was the first hosting analyst hired after Tier 1 Research was sold to the 451 Group in 2005 and spent 6 years as senior analyst for hosting. Welcome, Phil.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
So thanks to both of you for participating in today's HostingCon Meet A Speaker webinar. Now let's jump in and get started. So Antonio, I want to start by talking about your session, eliminating noisy neighbors and optimizing performance in the cloud. Why has quality of service, QoS, become such an important topic right now for hosting and cloud providers? And do you see the sector moving towards delivery and guaranteeing QoS?
Yeah, thanks very much, Kevin. Yeah, it's a great question, a fantastic topic, and obviously we have some fantastic speakers as well. When you see the likes of, SoftLayer up there, Cadera and SolidFire and Crucial Cloud Hosting, It's a great question. It's inevitable that people are going to be talking about quality of service more and more going forward. The noisy neighbor problem is actually defined by the fact that cloud in general is based upon shared resources, right? So we all know that that's what cloud represents. So it's generally easy to partition and CPU and RAM resources between virtual machines, this subsystem. Sorry, I beg your pardon, on virtual machines, but the disk subsystem is one which is extremely difficult to partition. So I'm getting very specific in my answer here, but this is really where the noisy neighbor scenario occurs, because one or more virtual machines on a physical host tend to consume very large amounts of disk I/O, and they result in very poor performance for the remaining virtual machine. So why am I saying all of this? Is because although it's a problem amongst all IT environments, it also creates an opportunity to compete with the likes of Amazon Web Services, for example, who generally don't have a response to this at the moment. And it really is an opportunity for hosts to elevate themselves in the face of a growing enterprise interest in the cloud industry. Now, obviously, we have folks like SolidFire there on purpose because the storage industry isn't sitting idly by. SSD drives, flash cache are all being used to speed storage along, and these techniques have a lot of benefits, but they also suffer the same problems. Because no matter how fast you make the storage systems, your compute systems are always going to be orders of magnitude faster if you end up with a noisy neighbor. So the result is that organizations try to employ tactics to avoid the risk of these shared environments, typically by massive over-provisioning and inefficiencies, having dedicated cloud storage platforms attached to the shared compute and so on. The problem is that the bigger and better array is always a big help, but the noisy neighbors are getting louder as well. The need for this QoS control to help ration access to storage, the way that other technologies offer QoS controls for network, CPU, and memory is going to be increasingly important, particularly in this sort of multi-tenant world that we're starting to live in now. So powerful solutions like SolidFire, who are on this panel itself, are going to be discussing how you can start to guarantee a number of IOPS on each of your volumes, and what that ultimately means from a QoS perspective to your hosting business. Because ultimately it is all going to come down to managing IOPS and guaranteeing QoS for all of us, and it really is going to be a differentiator going forward. So performance is going to rely on it, and that's where I think the industry is going to be all ears with this regard. So great panel to attend.
Excellent. Thanks, Antonio. So, Phil, you are moderating a general session titled Building Value on Top of Your Hosting. And for clarity, a general session is a panel presented in the Keynote hall versus a smaller educational session room. So what can you tell us about this session? You have assembled quite a who's who in the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So this session, I think truth be told, in previous years, we've always had a session like this, and it's always been an important topic in the industry because I think increasingly with the tightening competitive landscape and just the nature of the business itself, selling pure vanilla, plain vanilla infrastructure services is a tougher market to, is a tougher strategy to follow if you plan to continue growing. So building value on top of the hosting service is an excellent way for hosting companies to continue and maintain their growth, if not improve their growth trajectories. I think in 2013 it's particularly important because with kind of a slower market and a slower, larger macroeconomic environment, it's become increasingly crucial to grow your existing customer base. So growing ARPU is just crucial for success in an environment where maybe getting new customers is a little more difficult than it was perhaps last year or the year before. So those are kind of the themes we want to, that's kind of the larger context for this discussion. I think one of the changes we made to this session from previous versions is that we really wanted to address the challenges faced by companies that are playing more in the dedicated hosting space, managed hosting space, or selling dedicated or selling managed virtual servers. So SoftLayer and Hostware are two companies that have that compete in that space and are doing some interesting things. We invited Alex Daniluk of Parallels because he has done just a ton of work with Parallels and the APS standard in trying to get service providers of all shapes and sizes from all countries around the world to start selling SaaS application services on top of hosting. So we invited Alex because he has just a ton of insight to offer. And of course, I think it's worth always talking about email. Email's been perhaps the most successful value-added service for many hosting companies, shared and dedicated hosting companies. And we invited Rafael because we want to hear a bit about how he thinks email is going to be changing. And that's kind of a big theme we've seen, this past year, is that email itself is becoming, more advanced. It includes more features, and it's increasingly becoming consolidated within larger application suites. And that's a service that hosters are thinking about offering when it comes to building value on top of hosting.
Great, thanks, Phil. So, Antonio, back to you. You are presenting a session along with Russ Broomwell of GlowTouch titled Cloud Diversification, the Next Wave of Infrastructure Optimization. Tell us a bit about this session. GlowTouch and ScienceLogic aren't two companies we would quickly associate with each other, right?
Yeah, that's right. And frankly, it's been a new relationship as well between GlowTouch and ScienceLogic. And I also want to just say that we have a couple of other surprise guests that will be joining us as well. And I'll explain why in a second. But, fantastic company, GlowTouch, and some of the innovations that they're producing. So let me just talk about the session for a second, and then you'll see the context of why GlowTouch is interesting to the session, as well as ScienceLogic. We want to take a look at what the next wave of infrastructure is going to look like, and how hosting providers can really optimize that infrastructure. So we're going to examine any innovative infrastructure configurations that allow hosters to meet all of the defined IT requirements, while at the same time still being able to deliver, their value and their optimized services to their customers. And what we're starting to see, one of the big things that's emerging, is utilizing cloud diversification. So what I mean by that is hosters can capitalize on a hybrid infrastructure model, allowing them to bridge the gap between their own internal data center infrastructure that they've traditionally had, as well as trying to contemplate using external data centers and integrating multiple cloud sources themselves. So no longer is it reserved just for enterprises themselves, but now trying to look at the ability to use other third-party cloud providers on your back end or in different kind of topological models. So the driver for the session is really motivated by some of these options that I'll tell you, even last year at HostingCon, a lot of people sort of said, Amazon software rackspace are really leading the way in the infrastructure as a service market, and we also see them as in many cases, the enemy. And, fast forward a year, and sure enough, we're starting to see that the ability to leverage the hosters, right? Particularly if you're a host that's under pressure to grow your cloud infrastructure on a just-in-time and sort of cost-efficient basis, suddenly the appeal of a cloud-based rent-as-you-go infrastructure is not being lost on the hosting executives. So now you suddenly take a new look at Amazon rack-based software that are allowing hosting providers to partner with them to leverage the flexibility and the same security and nimbleness that they offer enterprises. So it gives hosts suddenly an option for speed-to-market, wide accessibility, redundancy, syndication, et cetera, but the problem in all of this is the lack of interoperability, obviously, between various cloud systems, and the absence of any sort of recognized industry standards. That all of these things provide a legitimate challenge, I think, for hosters trying to, get this completely right and seamless. So having said all this, a few of the questions we would answer in this session are: what factors should you consider when you evaluate the organization's infrastructure decision? Why is a cloud-based infrastructure not always the best answer? And why can traditional data centers be coupled with cloud-based infrastructure? Now, why GlowTouch is so interesting in all of this is because they've traditionally, over the last decade, provided custom application software development, websites, and a lot of technical and customer support. But more recently, they've really been focused on the cloud, in particular Amazon Web Services. Even earlier this year, they released their latest offering, which was a deployment, consulting, and managed service offering, enabling Parallel's automation platform environment to run on top of Amazon Web Services. It's extremely interesting. We know that Parallel is fairly ubiquitous amongst hosting providers, but now what's interesting is why would you put it on top of Amazon? Obviously because there's a demand from the hosting providers. So by the same token, we plan to have some guests that will present a sort of balanced view of, yes, we're doing it, and no, that's not the way to go. Try and give everybody a good perspective. From a ScienceLogic perspective, I too will be on the panel talking about hybrid use cases that we've actually seen practically over the last 6 to 9 months in particular, where a lot of our hosting service providers are actually leveraging Amazon Web Services on the back end, for example, through the storage gateway and other hybrid models as well that we're enabling them to monitor and manage on a real-time basis with their own optimized performance too. So very, very interesting panel, and I think opportunity for hosts to contemplate, what their architectures look like in the future.
Well, that sounds great, Antonio. I'm looking forward to the surprise myself because I'm not even aware of the panel expanding. So that sounds like a great opportunity. Okay, Phil, back to you. You are presenting an issues and trend track session like you did last year to a standing room only cloud, literally flowing out to the hallway. This year it's titled Market Update 2013, Where We Are, Where We're Going. What are some of the key themes you will be addressing in this market update presentation?
So thanks, Kevin. So I think the key themes of this event are going to be to the latter end of that question, which is where are we going? Certainly the presentation is going to kind of start with a level set of where we are in the industry. I usually start with a temperature check, kind of to gauge where growth is, come June 2013, and so certainly there have been some changes since 2012. Definitely want to level set the competitive landscape, which continues to shift every year. We constantly see new entrants. Pretty much every quarter of the year there is some kind of organization that's relatively new to hosting jumping into the hosting space. And then following those kind of two level set themes, we want to jump into some of the industry trends just to kind of highlight where we are, today in the industry, what's important, what's driving growth, where is the product development happening, and where are investments being made in the sector. And then, I want to focus the larger half of the discussion on where we're going. I think it's, certainly an interesting time in the space, perhaps the most competitive and fast-moving time the sector has ever seen. And I think that these kind of circumstances are dictating a lot of change for the hosting space, and we're seeing hosting companies, change is kind of a general word, but I'm going to try and narrow it down to some of the 4 key directions I see in terms of where hosters are going. And just to give, listeners a highlight, I think verticalization, productization, specialization, and optimization are the 4 directions that hosting companies are heading in. And if you attend my session, I'll elaborate on that a bit more.
Great. And Antonio, I'd like to get your opinion on where the sector is right now. Would it be fair to say that we are at a crucial juncture in the sector's growth and evolution?
Yeah, I would absolutely say so. I think traditional hosting, as we know it, is fast disappearing. If you're really serious about being a part of the big growth sector going forward, I think that very few hosters will be able to remain as sort of plain vanilla, shared hosters or dedicated hosters. So clearly, we've always been at this point of change, I think. But I think the real tipping point is now, and I think everybody really needs to start considering their options in terms of exactly where their niche is going to be, who the market is that they're going after. The pie is still large and still converging around outsourced infrastructure options, but so is the competition raising all the time too. So I think we are at a bit of a changing point in junction in the industry, which is probably why I think my session, maybe it's a lead into my next session, why it's so interesting.
Yeah, great transition there. So Antonio, you are moderating then a session titled Build or Buy, How to Grow Your Small to Mid-Sized Hosting Business. This panel session brings together an eclectic group. What kind of things can web hosts and cloud service providers expect to learn from your session?
Yeah, so people like Peter Hopper from DH Capital, Paul Stapleton, these very seasoned guys in this industry, they know exactly, they're very well versed on who's suffering, who's got great growth potential ahead of them, and they see it firsthand a lot of times based on the valuations of companies. And why do I say that is because your ability to grow is based upon a series of metrics, let's say, such as your operational leverage capabilities. In other words, do you have very modern IT systems, tools, platforms from which you can grow going forward? Do you have a very defined market that you can go after? Do you have low churn? Are you understanding the the markets that you're in and offering services that really speak to that market? Are you elevating them to an application layer or an infrastructure layer? All of these same questions that will enable you to grow are exactly what the investment bankers are looking for in terms of helping their clients understand who would be a good acquisition target as well. So those same things that help you grow are the same things that actually give you a very large enterprise valuation. So I think this session is going to be very interesting because it's not just, do you build your way there organically, do you buy your way there and afford it, but also, should you be considered being bought or actually merging with somebody else as well in order to reach your synergies going forward. Obviously, people like Rackspace have a luxury of being a large organization, but I think what's still interesting there is that they'll be able to tell us the point at which they realize they needed to start considering acquiring companies too, because they certainly didn't do so when they were small and from the get-go. So again, a very interesting panel.
Okay, another session then building off of that, Fund Your Growth, Debt versus Equity, is being moderated by Phil. Phil, this session seems highly relevant given the current M&A environment. What can attendees expect to learn from your session?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Definitely, given the current M&A environment is relevant. I think more specifically, I think what is relevant is the fact that many hosting companies in the space have decided to build rather than exit. So I think it speaks to the mindset of hosters right now and their ambitions, and speaks to the trajectory of growth in the sector, which is definitely still moving in a healthy and positive direction. So whereas Antonio's session probably focused a bit more on strategy and the pros and cons of those specific strategies, this session will focus more on companies that have made the decision to grow but are exploring what kind of financing strategies they're going to take in order to get to where they want to go. So definitely some interesting panelists here who come from different sides of the game. Dan Gannon with Data Sales. Data Sales is a leasing company, and there are many hosting companies that have taken this strategy to fund their growth. Sean Charnock, who's actually a former customer of Dan, when Data Sales when he was with SoftLayer, is now a managing director at DH Capital, and Sean will be talking about what some of the pros and cons, along with Frank Stiff at Cheval Capital, of taking on taking on some debt in exchange for equity to fund your growth. And of course, Sean comes from the operator side, has some interesting perspective. And the two non-financial attendees are also very interesting. Panelists, I'm sorry. They're also very interesting because they have recently, in the last year or so, made their own decisions, and so we thought we'd invite them to kind of offer the perspective from the hosting company. And they certainly have some things to say, having made their own decisions about how they're going to fund their next stages of growth. These are two companies, again, that have made a conscious decision to stay in the space, to compete going forward, and to hopefully to go through many more stages of growth.
That's great, and I think one thing that the attendees are going to find out is that the hard questions that both Antonio and you will be asking will really dive deep in each one of these topics, and the attendees are going to leave with, I think, phenomenal insight as to why certain decisions were made, what could have happened if a different type of decision was made. So walking out of there will really give them a strong feel for options that they have in their future, which is really the point of HostingCon's program, to shape the future. So I would like to get both of your opinions. First Antonio, then Phil. What's your take on the keynote for HostingCon 2013 being delivered by Max Wessel, SAP's Business Innovation Leader North America and former fellow at Harvard Business School's Forum for Growth and Innovation? Why is this topic relevant and timely for the web hosting and cloud services industry?
Okay. I'll jump in. So, I mean, I think, at first blush when I saw the topic, I have to admit, I thought, oh, this looks quite academical and theoretical. And the more I thought about it, suddenly started to realize how critical it is to the hosting industry, because the cycles of disruption are getting meaningfully shorter every single year. So, whereas cycles used to happen every sort of 10 years, and we used to talk about it, we went from mainframe to client server to cloud and blah, blah, blah. Now, we're absolutely seeing technology software vendors, and I'm hearing this more and more nowadays, who were sort of on top of their game a few years ago, suddenly not being there anymore, and because another disruptive technology has sort of pulled the carpet from under them very rapidly. I think that is going to manifest itself also in the hosting providers who themselves are investing and betting on all of these technologies too. So I think it's a very apropos topic, especially since Max is going to be talking about the theory of disruption and how it can be used to guide your core business operations. And I think it's interesting. I'll just throw one more thing out there. Last year when we were at HostingCon, we asked a lot of the hosters themselves, what is your biggest competition in the market? And you bet it was all the bigger hosting providers. And then we sort of said, well, what is the biggest threat to the industry as a whole? And they said price wars. So it's very interesting that Max himself is going to talk about exactly the difference between a disruptive innovation and pulling it apart from mere price competition. And I think a lot of the hosters get it. The last question I had was, how do you differentiate yourself from the competition? And overwhelmingly, people said it's the management and support that differentiates them rather than price, which is interesting because if you can start to correlate, is there a way in which to be a disruptor yourself from a management and support perspective and differentiate from market versus price? I think Max might be able to stimulate some really good ideas in that regard. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think perhaps maybe the only kind of additional comments I would make. I think clearly the industry has is at a unique time in its history. I don't think in following the industry for many years, I think I've never seen such a disruptive force. I've seen many competitive threats and many changes in the technology and many changes in the competitive landscape, but I never really saw something that had such a profound impact as Amazon. So in many ways, I think hosting companies are facing disruption for the first time, meaningful and serious disruption, and I think that thinking about that would give hosters a better perspective on really how crucial the decisions they're making today are for the future of their business. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, many hosters in the industry have made that decision, have made a conscious decision to compete and to continue competing going forward. But I think they have to come in with the right mindset and understand that, success is not going to be, perhaps not going to be made of, the formula may not be the same. When you're facing such a disruptive force, and innovation is such a key part of dealing with that disruption. So I think absolutely the timing is perfect for this kind of keynote and for this kind of insight. I think hosting companies need to pay close attention.
Great, and we have one last question I want to ask you, and then we'll wrap up the webinar and keep it to the 30 minutes that we had scheduled. So past conference attendees have validated that HostingCon presented them with the highest level networking opportunity of the year. As such, HostingCon 2013, as I presented before, has been designed even more to drive networking, partnerships, and relationship building. So Antonio, what kind of conversations does ScienceLogic hope to have with hosters and cloud providers at HostingCon 2013?
Oh, great questions. I didn't see that one coming. Well, obviously from our perspective, I think we, trying to take my vendor hat off and try to be objective about it. I think even though I represent ScienceLogic, we genuinely feel that we're a part of this hosting industry, and we feel that there is a little bit of a loss as to where to go next amongst a lot of hosters. And we genuinely, some of the conversations I want to have with them are, how do I get you out of feeling lost and help you with your, have a definitive roadmap and direction ahead of you as to how you want to grow your business. We'd love to have that conversation with you, both as a vendor and just objectively too. And I think secondly, how do we help you be more efficient going forward? Because we know that like I said before, the legacy hosting world is changing rapidly. So what are the cost-effective ways? Because we can often prognosticate about what hosters need to do to change their direction going forward, but it's not an easy task, and it can be costly as well. So we'll have to have that discussion about what are your problems that you're facing today, and we all know that you've got burning fires. How do we help you make that change going forward and have those healthy discussions and introduce you to the right partners and people who can help you with that as well.
And Phil, what about you from an analyst perspective? What kind of conversations are you looking at having at HostingCon 2013?
Well, definitely I enjoy, speaking to companies and finding out where they are and what they've been doing, perhaps, in the year that I haven't seen them since the last HostingCon. So, I'm always looking to hear, kind of the growing pains and the success stories and the case studies that hosting companies have to share. That's always useful, and I always look forward to that. The vendor side or the technology supplier side of HostingCon is also extremely useful and something I always look forward to because, you know, the amount of innovation and the new technology that hosting companies get to choose from these days is just unbelievably complex and diverse. So, you know, I always see something that I didn't see the year before and something I didn't see the year before as well. So it really, you know, it's very eye-opening in the sense that you get to see, you know, get a hands-on or first look at some of the technologies that hosting companies are going to use to, you know, to become more efficient and to power new services. So those are the type of things from the analyst perspective I most enjoy.
So this concludes the Meet a Speaker webinar. To see the entire conference program, please visit www.hostingcon.com and hit the schedule link, or simply click the View Conference Schedule button on the homepage. Thanks, Phil and Antonio, and all who have participated on this webinar. Again, we highlighted about 7 different sessions out of the 45 educational sessions that are being presented at HostingCon, so I really ask all that attended here today to go view that schedule. A lot of the things that Antonio and Phil mentioned, such as how do you differentiate yourself in a crowded marketplace, how do you define segmentations to go after. Those are additional sessions that are going to be presented. So please look at that schedule, and I think that you'll be delighted with what you have in store. And don't forget, early bird expires 1 week from today on Thursday, May 16th. Be sure to register at hostingcon.com to save on early bird rates. So get ready to raise your game at HostingCon 2013. Look forward to seeing everyone in Austin.